I'm Dave Harrison, and my life at this point in life, I'm very fortunate, is committed to helping entrepreneurs, frankly, achieve their dreams. I do that both as a volunteer through SCORE. I generally have 20 to 25, generally 25 companies or so that I mentor and coach. I'm on the board of directors of a pretty large company, over $1 billion, that I helped start years ago. Started over 35 companies, but had corporate careers at global responsibilities at Johnson & Johnson and Armstrong. And you may not know Standard Industries by its name, but it's the largest roofing manufacturer, as an example, in the world. So I hope you get something out of this. And let's start off with an agreement. You tell me if this is fair. Type it in the chat room. And by the way, I have 3 screens here, so if you see me looking around, it's not that I'm not paying attention to you. I'm on a different screen. All right, but tell me if you'd agree with this. Will tonight be successful for you if, one, at the end of this session, you have more confidence that you can hate selling, but you can still generate revenue? And a lot of people, don't like selling, don't like what the reputation is, don't like what they think it is, don't like all that stuff. Two, you get some insight into customers' needs and wants, and how, frankly, you can help them, not sell, help them and generate revenue, and some tools to enable you to achieve more success in, frankly, everything you do. So does that sound like, if we can accomplish that, it would be a pretty good use of your time tonight? Does that make sense? Are we good? That's fair? Awesome. All right. And for me, here's success for me. All right. If we achieve your success by the end of the night, if you didn't like it, don't tell anybody. Leave the session gracefully and quietly too. If you liked it, clap appreciatively and complete a good survey. You'll get a survey at the end. And if you loved it, go wild. Thumbs up. Tell your friends of future webinars I'm doing. I think I've done 10 or 11 so far, and I'll get you access to those if you want them, and maybe come to my next session. All right. So that's success for me. So let's start with the foundation. All right. Let's do the foundation and see what we got here. Foundation is customers expect good product, good service, and a good price. They expect that stuff. They don't necessarily talk about it, they expect it. So as an example, in my life, my wife expects me to remember her birthday, and she expects me to remember her anniversary, and expects me, to those types of events. There's the core things customers expect to be acceptable. What does that mean? Therefore, we've got to share with them what they expect. I'm going to take care of the things you'd expect. I'm not going to forget anniversaries, not going to forget birthdays, whatever. But what do they talk about? What do they act on? What gets them excited? It's the things they didn't expect. It's the flowers they didn't expect. It's whatever it is that you brought an offer that they didn't expect. So the key to business is provide what they expect so you're acceptable, but then go beyond their expectations. That's what they'll remember. That's what they'll talk about. That's what they'll tell their friends and family. And they're the ones who'll likely do business with you. So the foundation of all of this, forget everything you think you know or training you may have taken in sales. Just think of it this way. Whoever educates best and earns the most trust is going to win more than their fair share. And that's the key, just more than their fair share. All right? Whoever educates best, earns the most trust, wins more than their fair share. And we're going to talk tonight about how to do a lot of that without selling. If you hate selling and you don't know how to overcome that hate in a different way, you can't drive revenue. So, the traditional view of selling, and tell me this is sort of true. The basic formula is you build rapport, you get a conversation going, and then you tell them about your company, and then you tell the features and benefits of your product and services, and then you try to convince them that they should buy from you. And then you're all prepared for all the different objections they may have so you can answer those objectives. And then you try to close the sale. And then you overcome their latest objections because they didn't close. And then you try to close again. And that keeps happening until they kick you out. As they talk about, never stop closing. Now, is that fair? Does that represent what a lot of people think is sales, how they're trained in sales, and how they try to perform sales? Does that make sense to you before I go on? Is that reflective of how a lot of people think of what selling is? All right. And I don't know about you, but one is I didn't like it when I was taught that way. I didn't feel good about myself when I was taught that way. I'd go home after work and I'd want to take a shower because I felt terrible. And what are the requirements for this kind of selling? Well, memorizing a bunch of stuff, especially they'll tell you over and over, what are the objections? What are the objections? How are you going to answer this objection? How are you going to answer this objection? I remember I got dizzy, all the objections I'm supposed to be prepared for. And then you're supposed to control the conversation and sort of manipulate that conversation. And you embellish some things and talk about, it's close enough to the truth. Again, does that sound familiar to you? Does that, if you've sat in sales training, does that sound like the kinds of things that they share is what selling is? Is that fair? Is that reflective? All right. So let's go back. Let's start at 100,000 feet and figure out what we can learn so that even if you hate selling, you can effectively build your business. And by the way, the things we're talking about here is not just true of customers. It's true of employees. It's true of sons and daughters and husbands and wives and friends, whatever. It's the same stuff in what we're going to share. So let's build some core concepts we could work off of. What's going on? Think back to high school. Think back to what we learned in those tough, difficult days for most of us about dating and relationships. And tell me this isn't true. At age 14, 15, what did most people do? They thought, oh, it'd be awesome to have this date. And what ended up happening? Did they ask them out? Rarely. No. Why? Why do people freeze up? Why do people freeze up back then, the idea of asking someone on a date? And what's the reality? The reason is we are wired as human beings to put emphasis on experiences we don't want. We put more emphasis on the experience we don't want, and it's secondarily the gains we do want. And that surprises a lot of people. That's not the way sales is often talked about. But the point is, most revenue is generated from customers who are thinking, this is a safer choice than my other options. It helps me avoid experiences I really don't want. All right? So the obstacle is we're wired to avoid and then secondarily to gain. And what most people do, they rush right into, here are the benefits, because that's what we're taught. So some lessons learned we might have learned back then in those days. Most people, by the time they got the date, what do they do in the date? They show up and throw up. All they do is talk about them because they think the key is impressing the other person. And what did we find out in high school? That didn't work. I remember that moment that it finally made sense to me. And here's what I finally figured out. How she felt about me had more to do with how she felt about herself when she was with me. And that was even more important than how much she knew about me. Not being the dumbest guy, not being the smartest, but that's when I figured out, well, the more questions I ask and demonstrate that I really care, and respect her, the more she liked me. And I thought about, well, who are the people we generally like? And what do they all have in common? We trust them. So the success recipe is care plus respect equals trust. And by the way, I see Porter, it's technically a 60-minute webinar. Usually I come right in 60 minutes. This one might go slightly longer. If you can't, I am recording this and it will be available to you. And I'll talk about that later. All right. So the trust ingredients. What are the trust ingredients? Because trust, at the end of the day, is your most important asset for you personally and for your business. Trust is the most important thing. And the best way to generate trust, it's not what we think it is. It's not selling. It's not showing up and throwing up and telling them all our features and benefits. No, the first step in trust is questions that demonstrate you care and you respect them. And then secondly, what we're not wired to do is explain the why. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. We learned that from high school. So let's think about what's actually going on, the customer's perspective, all right? It's a buying process. So what do they expect? They expect you're going to try to sell them, right? You're going to try to convince them. And the basis is they think what they're being told is what's good for you, not necessarily what's good for them, the customer. They believe salespeople are out to get what salespeople want and trying to convince them to get there. And so what ends up happening? Well, initially, we don't trust the salesperson because what are they doing? They don't seem to care what I want. So what's the implication? The implication is the first key to being successful if you hate selling is forget selling, but focus on just building trust through meaningful discussions. And I like to think of those discussions as, I can be presenting to, which I did in my past life, I could be presenting to Sam Walton back when he was alive, or I could be presenting on the factory floor. I took the same attitude in both. I tried to pretend I was in my living room and just having a discussion and just trying to be helpful. And if I can't help, I'm where they might get better help. That's my job. So customers expect to be sold, and that's an experience they're uncomfortable with. However, what do they really prefer? What do you really prefer when you're the customer? Well, you want help making the best buy decision for you. So why could you help? Well, they know they're not the expert. They want to avoid making a bad decision, just like we learned in high school. We're wired to avoid decisions and experiences we don't want. The implication is, and this is key, the key lesson. If you're not selling, you're trying to help, always offer options. Never say, this is what you should buy. This is what you should do. Why? Even if you're positive that that's what they're going to buy, that's what they're interested in, the minute you only give them one option, what have you psychologically done? Said, I'm making the decision for you. I'm trying to convince you. So key thing if you hate selling, always offer options and have a discussion. So they're making the decision, even if you're positive what that decision is going to be, always have alternative options. And again, what's the implication of all this? Whoever educates best earns the most trust. If you earn the most trust, you're going to win more than your fair share. Is this helpful so far? Give me some feedback. Right speed, wrong speed, helpful, not helpful. Give me some quick feedback before I keep going on. Any thoughts? Okay, sounds good. Good feedback. Thank you. All right. So the weird part of all this, despite all the training or whatever, you get a giant disconnect. Let me share why it's a giant disconnect. For the customer, what's their comfort zone? Comfort zone meaning, hey, they're they don't have to focus on avoiding a bad experience. They're in their comfort zone. So what's their comfort zone? It's not the facts. People use facts selectively to support their decision. Their decision's based on opinions with facts to support it, right? And what are they looking to do? Well, avoid experiences they don't want and gain ones they do want. And again, what's the implication? Trust is the most important part for them making decisions because they know they don't know the facts. They're listening facts to support an opinion. They're making a decision on opinion, which by definition means almost every decision someone makes to a degree is risk. All right. So what? Well, what do? Therefore, people summarize everything you said down to 2 or 3 things: an opinion, a few key concepts, and remember, enough facts to support it to their comfort level. So go back to where we started. Ideally, we want to be acceptable, right, with competitors. But if we're only acceptable, the only mistake the customer can make is pay too much. Think about it. It's in the customer's interest to view whatever you're doing as the same as your competition. It's in their psychological interest. So it's in their interest to try to figure out why you're just similar to everybody else. Because then the only mistake they can make is pay too much. Your job is to just help them understand that your option is different than some of the other options. And if that's good for them, great. And if it's not, it was great meeting them. Why? The reason people summarize their decisions down to opinions, it's safe. They can't be wrong. With facts, they might be called out. So if you watch the world-class companies, the Johnson & Johnsons, the Microsofts, the Procter & Gamble's, the company that spent a ton of money on marketing, they use facts only to support core opinions. Help the customer to get to their safe zone. And think of it, in our side, in the business side, our comfort zone is just the opposite. It's the facts. We have the expertise. So think about that disconnect. Our comfort zone is facts. The customer's comfort zone is 2 or 3 core opinions, important ones, be able to support it. You get a breakdown. And what's the implication? Whoever educates best earns the most trust, because trust is focused on caring about what's good for them and respecting them. When you do that, not focused on yourself, you win more than your fair share. So far, understandable? We still in good shape? Everyone happy so far? Quick feedback? Okay. So, question. Can I assume most everybody on here is a capitalist? Everyone agree with me? Most of you on here are capitalists. Would that be fair to say? All right. So tell me if this isn't true. Capitalism at its core is exchanging value for money. And frankly, sales at its core is communicating that value for money. Is that right? That's all capitalism is. Having a service or product, right? And you're exchanging value for money based on people believing you're a better option than their other options based on what they've learned through communication. That fair? So I said, well, I hate selling, but who are the most successful capitalists? I'll just copy whatever they're doing and stop selling and figure out what they're doing and copy that. I went and looked. Who are the most successful capitalists in this country statistically? Well, according to the IRS, it's doctors, lawyers, bankers, and accountants. And you're probably thinking to yourself, well, that's pretty stupid. They don't sell. Oh, yeah, they do. They just don't sell like we're taught to sell. They do something totally different. They focus on how to educate the customer, earn their trust, and win more than their fair share. So we don't learn how to do what they do. and copy what they do. Let me give you a quick example. Let's just think about a doctor. When you walk in a doctor's office, what does it look like? Bright, clean. You walk up to the reception desk. What's behind a doctor's reception desk that every other business tries to hide? What's behind there? File cabinets. And what do you see in the file cabinets? All color-coded. Look at the hundreds, if not thousands of people that trust us. Marketing. 3, you go into the exam room. What's on the walls of the exam room? Diplomas and all sorts of stuff. Marketing. But here's the most important thing to watch what doctors do. And by the way, Michael, I'm going to discuss later how to get the recording link. That'll be all set for you. All right. But I'll have it for you, and I'll tell you how to get it emailed to you if you'd like it. So, but here's what I want you to picture, the most important part. The doctor walks in, and what do they have? Either a computer or clipboard to take notes. Those notes, it has the questions they want to make sure they cover so they don't miss something. It's writing down what they think is important based on the discussion. What do most salespeople don't do? What do most people don't do? They walk into appointments. They don't even have a pad of paper. They don't take notes. If someone doesn't take notes, what do you think that does to trust? It's terrible. If you don't take notes, they're thinking, A, you don't care, not likely to happen, you're not following up, they may have said something stupid. Every reason of not taking a note is perceived as negative, no positive, which is why at Johnson & Johnson, I learned this at age 25, it was grounds for being fired if you didn't take notes at every meeting, internally and externally, because not taking them damages trust. All right, so let's go a little deeper. All right, if you watch doctors, lawyers, and accountants, tell me if this isn't true. I'm just giving you a way of thinking about this, and I call it the triple A's. If you stop trying to sell and just try to follow the triple A's, you'll have a lot more fun, and you'll feel good about what you did. And you're not going to get every customer, but frankly, you don't want every customer. They're not all good for you, and you're not good for them. So let's think what a doctor does, and tell me if this isn't true. The first thing a doctor does, they have a list of questions. They have a list of questions. And what happens when they ask the questions? You know, how do you feel? So I'm going to compare most people to a doctor. Most people, if you said, hey, how do you feel? Hey, I feel absolutely great. They'd say, well, I guess we're done. No, a doctor knows they can't add value until they find a problem or a risk, or if the customer doesn't know, client doesn't know any problems or risks, educate them on potential problems and risks for that customer until you have problems and risks. Very difficult to add value. So what does a doctor do? How do you feel? Feel great. Is anything bothering you? Yeah, no, nothing's bothering me. What do? They give up? No. Well, have you had any pain? Have you had any trouble sleeping? Have you had any sneezing? Have you had a barrier of questions? And what do they do when they run out of questions, of facts? They go to the next best thing. Well, have you had any relatives that have had this? No. Have you had any relatives that had this? No. Have you had any relatives that had this? Yeah, my aunts on my second side. Oh, there's a risk. Again, the key is act like a doctor, like an explorer. Be curious. Explore what problems and risks are they aware of. And if they're not aware, keep asking, probing to jog their memory. Oh, yeah, I do have that. And if you run out of that, and here's the weird thing, when people run out of facts, what gets left? It's the gold. It's the experience they want to avoid. So let me give you an example. A doctor. Hey, Dave, why'd you come in here? Well, my leg's bothering me. Well, tell me about the leg. Well, it's painful here and it's hard to walk. And how long have you had that? Well, I've had it for about a week now. Do you know how you caused it? No, I don't remember how I caused it, whatever. Keeps asking those questions. And when I run out of facts, where does he go to next? Hey, let me ask you a question. When this leg bothers you, how does this affect your life? Well, a big part of what I do, doctor, is playing with the grandchildren. This is what do you guys play? I go, well, I got a grandson who's 10. I got a granddaughter who just turned 8. Love to play lacrosse during lacrosse season. They're awesome lacrosse players. Their dads are both college lacrosse players. They play basketball in the winter. I love going to their games. And, at home we play horse and stuff like that. And they play soccer in the fall. Doctor goes to me, well, right now it's February. What? Lacrosse is probably starting up soon. Yeah, it is. Tell you what, I noticed, found the gold. What's really important, the experience that right now I can't have because my leg hurts. But what is it I really want? Not the leg feeling great. What I really want is being out there with the kids. So now the doctor goes to the second phase. Here's what I heard. Tell me if I got this right. I just want to make sure I got it right. What I heard is the leg's bothering you in this way, and this way, and this way. And because of that, you're not out playing with the grandkids like you want to. Did I get that right? Yeah, that's pretty right. Sometimes they'll add to it. Well, you know what? I promise, I'm pretty sure we can help. I got a couple of options. Let me give you what both options are. Step one, notice step one, step two, step three. So you know it's a sequence. And this is what'll happen. Or here's another option. And remember, always offer options, even if you're certain which one they're going to take, so they can make the decision. And then they may back it up with proof or, where, hey, I've had several patients that have done this. I know we've had good luck with it most of the time. Just assure, here's what I heard. I get that right. Hey, promise, I think I can help you with that. Here's some options on how and why I think it'll help. And here's some proof of other sources on, well, I'm pretty sure it's going to help. You know what a doctor does? And what's the last thing they do? They see 40 patients a day. But you walk out feeling like they remember you. They like you. Make sure you say hello to your wife for me. Whatever it is. They thank you. They appreciate you. You just think about it. Isn't that so much easier than selling? And something you wouldn't hate doing is just asking a bunch of questions. When they run out of facts, they get to the experience that they're really trying to avoid and again. Once you got that, you've uncovered it too. Share what you think you heard. They might fill in some extra that you didn't. What you heard, promise, hey, I think I can try to help. Or if you don't think you can help, be straight out and say, you know what, I don't think I can help you, but here's where you might get better help. Some of the best customers I ever had, I turned down business and told them to do something that wasn't in my best interest. And 2 years later, oh my God, why? Because they trusted. They knew I respected and cared for them. I was looking out for their interests. Strategically, trust builds opportunities. And the way I like to think about business is think about all the touch points that your business has with a potential client, anything they see and anything they hear. And ask yourself, is there anything I can do at that touch point different than what they expect, different than the competition, that increases trust? Look at every single one. Brochures, telephone calls, whatever. Every touch point. What's the customer hearing? How can I generate trust better? What's trust based on? Demonstrating care and respect. Scientifically, think about it this way. In general, we trust with our eyes, and I don't mean just our eyeballs, what we can picture in our head, right? Stories. We trust visually. Supporting facts to that trust and opinions is mostly through the ears. Trust is much more rapid when it's visual than what people can absorb through facts. which is the opposite of what most people do. Salespeople show up and throw up. No. The second thing strategically is, prepare some notes just like a doctor and take notes, because that increases trust. Organization. Some salespeople think, well, I don't need those notes. They're not for you. When you don't take notes, you're diminishing trust. Again, feedback. Is this making sense so far? Should I keep going? Are we good? Are you picking this up? Do you have any questions so far? Any thoughts? Okay, Michael. Good for Michael. Anybody else? Are we good? All right. Lots of good info. Okay. Getting good stuff. Awesome. All right. So I was very fortunate early in my career. The chairman of the board of IBM and the chairman of the board of Johnson & Johnson were on each other's board of directors. And they decided to take 10 of us from each company. I was one of the 10 selected from all Johnson & Johnson, 10 people. So there's 20 of us in a room, and our assignment is help us understand how to identify and train the best salespeople, and help us understand how to identify and train our best leaders and managers. Now, picture us in a room. At the time, I was doing oral care products, toothbrushes and toothpaste and mouthwashes. This person over here was doing OB tampons. This one over here is doing Tylenol. This one over here is doing computers. This one over here is software. The oddest assortment of people you can imagine. We're going, well, when you work with a company like this, you do what they tell you to do. And they have plenty of money to do it. So we sat down, we had a lot of data and trying to figure out what we can learn from it. And here was the weirdest part. Everything we predicted was wrong. We said, well, they're probably extroverts. Didn't matter. They're probably athletic. Didn't matter. They're probably good jokes and fun to be with. Didn't matter. We go, this is crazy. None of our stereotypes mattered. Male, female, none of it matters. What mattered? And at first, we didn't understand why. Our best salespeople, our best managers, our best lawyers were good storytellers. At first, that made no sense to us. But all of us can tell a story. We couldn't understand why. So we stepped back. We brought in some psychologists, some help. And what I'm showing you is what we did. We said, well, for most people, who's the most important in a conversation? It's us. It's me. For a storyteller, it's you. What language do they use? Most of us use the language of the industry. Storytellers, no. They use simpler language to make sure you get insight. So a doctor doesn't talk about like influenza, right? They don't use words like that, even though that's the technical word. What's their approach? Most of us, we try to convince you. What does a storyteller do? I'm just trying to help you. What's their attitude? Most of us, we either won or we lost. And what's in it for me? Storytellers, they're purpose-driven. They have nothing to do with winning and losing. It got to do with helping somebody else, making their day better. What's the primary focus of information? Most of us, the logic. Here's the logic. That's our comfort zone. What is it what do storytellers focus on? Here's the result. Here's the why. Here's the why. Here's the lesson. Here's the experience. Here's the outcome. And what's criteria for success? Most of us, they heard me. Storytellers, they understood me. And then go back to the ears and the eyes. Scientifically, storytellers, they're helping it be visual in the brain, or however, with the facts coming through the ears, but it's through the brain. It's what they can visualize. A small amount of visualization is like a full chapter of a book. So what do we learn? Paint a mental picture of the experiences you're going to help them avoid or gain. Two, most companies get this wrong. They're good, but they're not great. The great companies figured out the key that the customer is looking for is what's the experience I'm going to avoid or gain after I buy your product and after I start using it. What do most of us do? Here's what our product does. No. Does is a fact. Why should I care? How's it going to affect my life after I buy it? And how when I stop using it? And three, storyteller just communicates with people like, I'm in your living room. They're more animated. It's got nothing to do with being so-called professional. I'm just here to be helpful. And I care about you. Best leaders, best managers, best salespeople. Not necessarily the smartest, not necessarily the best memories, not the best strategists. No. Great storytellers help people understand so they're comfortable making a decision based on their options that's best for them. Step back. What the core to revenue success? It's communicating value in a superior way. So here's some core beliefs that I live by. Without superior customer value, you're probably always going to experience an inferior income. If customers don't understand your differences, not just what you do, but your differences versus other options, they're usually going to buy based on lowest price because that's how they learn. They learn through differences. If you tell them we do this and this and this, and they like one of your competitors, well, they're going to assume the competitor probably does it too. Key is, what do they first expect? But the core is, what are your differences? And when they have confidence in that value, it begins and ends with their perception of your trustworthiness. Have you demonstrated care and respect throughout the entire process through the questions you ask, the notes you take, and making sure they understand the why, the experience after they've bought, after they start using, that they're likely to avoid or gain. And when you do that well, you're doing what people want. You're helping them buy, not because they're being convinced. And by the way, they don't expect to be treated this way. And because they don't expect to be treated this way, you build an army of people talking about you and sending referrals. And that's the key to success in any business. When people are talking about you, they're more loyal. And when they're sharing about you, it's more trusted than if they heard it from you. And here's the weird thing. What do people talk about? If you don't do what they expected, they're going to talk about that. If you do what's expected, they're probably not going to talk about that. I'll give you an example using my wife. If I remember anniversary, birthday, whatever, she might mention to a few friends. But if I send home flowers just because it was Thursday, she's going to tell everybody. People talk about what they didn't expect. Now, if I didn't remember the anniversary and I didn't remember the birthday and I sent flowers on a Thursday, what is she talking about? She hasn't even gotten the flowers. I didn't pass the test of expectation. And she's going to talk about, I forgot that birthday or anniversary. See the point? What's the implication? Whoever educates best, earns the most trust, wins more than their fair share. So think about this scenario, building your army. Your army is referrals, and it's the difference between having good results and great results. Scenario one, okay, it was an expected experience. Accomplished it. Nothing unexpected. What are they going to talk about? Probably nothing. Scenario two, they forget the anniversary, the birthdays, whatever. They don't do anything unexpected. What are they going to talk about? It's all bad. They forgot my anniversary. Number three, they forgot to do the expected. They did the unexpected. What are they going to focus on? You're not getting credit for the unexpected. They're focused on the big stuff you missed. What are you looking for? Scenario 4. Accomplish what they expected. And then what they didn't expect. That's what they're going to talk about. That's what they're going to build your army. The implication, again, whoever educates best earns the most trust and wins more than their fair share. So there's sort of two philosophies that people use in business. Most people are on the left side. They talk about what they're going to do. They show up and throw up. They think that's what selling is. And their attitude is, I either win or lose. What's the approach? I'm going to convince them with facts and logic. What do a lot less people do? Untraditional. I'm just here to help. If I can help, great. But I'm passionate about helping. And my approach is I'm going to ask you a lot of questions. If I think I can help, I'm going to show you how and why and the options available and some proof that it's going to work. I'm going to respect and care for you. I'm going to appreciate you emotionally. And what's the core here? We'll focus on the why. Why do you care that that leg's hurting? About the grandchildren. It's about whatever. What's the experience after you've accomplished it, after you've bought it? That's where the gold is. Fortunately for you, most companies and most of your competitors haven't figured that out. But when you do, it's awesome. And when you take that untraditional approach, you're building more trust. You have more insight. They're more likely to want to do business with you and tell their friends and family because of an experience they didn't expect. At the end of the day, most people focus on the what of their business. Here's what we do. Here's how we do it. Hogs get slaughtered. What's untraditional? Hey, if I can help you get to a better decision, whether you buy from me or not, I feel good about that. I had a good day. I helped someone. And that's focusing on their why. Why would they care? So a way to think about all this, pulling it together, is a pathway to both value that clients value and trust is when the customer understands and admits. The key is admits. They're engaged in the conversation. They've shared with you, yes, I can see how your option is different than the other options. The primary potential risks and problems and experiences, they have insight. They know the who, what, when, where, how, which are the causes of anything to happen, and the why, which is where all insight comes from, in the decision that they're going to make. And then they recognize what you do differently, to where the value is, than most competitors, other options they have. To eliminate or reduce those problems, the primary, and also enjoy some gain. What's in it for me? So again, from academic research, and again, I was a full-time professor for 8 years, I think, MBA level and whatever. I think you may have known that. I may have shared that. But what's the research show? If gain is uncertain for people, we're wired to focus on how do we avoid risk. When risk is certain, we're wired to seek gain. So by helping people understand the risks and problems and decisions they're going to make, they're wired now to seek gain. It's the opposite. And what's the implication? Well, most decisions have uncertain gain. So people focus on how to avoid it. By the way, when you're sharing information, what's one of the biggest mistakes people do? Because they're show up and throw up with facts. Beware of vampires. What's a vampire? A vampire is information that happens to be accurate, but it's sucking the blood away from the most important things you hope they understand. By overwhelming people with facts, we think we're helping. No, if they want more facts, they'll ask for them. Focus on what you think are the most important experiences to avoid and gain, and leave out the vampires until they ask. Vampires are sucking the blood of the most important message. So what's the truth about value? What's the fundamental reality? If you're only acceptable and not different, you're a commodity. And a commodity, well, exceptional income only comes if you're the lowest cost. And that's pretty rare, being low cost and maintaining it long term. It's easier to be successful in business by differentiating. And there's always a way to differentiate with value. Your value is your differences that are important to the customer. Implication: whoever achieves best earns the most trust, wins more than their fair share. And academics also study, well, how do we actually learn? And we learned this in high school, trying to get a date. It wasn't what she knew about me. It's the quality of the questions I asked that demonstrated care and respect, which means she was talking. The more they talk, the more success you will have. Because the more they're talking, the better they feel about themselves. The more they're talking, it's because you've demonstrated that you really care to hear and respect it, and you're going to try to help them. So it goes back to AAAs. The more questions you ask versus tell engages them. Then you share the insight, which is the why. Here's why it's going to work. Here's why I can help you playing with the grandchildren and demonstrate it. And we got a few options to get there. And that gets to what drives their behavior. What's in it for me? The experience you help me avoid or gain. So again, it goes back to the prior. When the customer understands and admits, that means they're engaged, they're talking. The primary potential problems and risk and experience. There is absolute risk and experience. So therefore, I'm seeking gain. Insight. They understand how it's going to affect their life in the decision and recognize what you do differently, which is value, then there are other options, and there are other options. And you help eliminate it better, and that gets to the what's in it for me. Does that make sense? It's not that complicated. It's focusing on what's going to help them achieve what they want, the experience they want. So one of the things I've used in my teaching, my writing, whatever, I call it my why theory. And anytime I'm dealing with people, if I'm dealing with shareholders, employees, suppliers, customers, whoever it is, I use this model to think it through. One, trust is the most important asset. Right? What's the recipe? Care and respect. What are the ingredients of the recipe? Am I sharing the why? The result of any cause, who did something, when it happened, where it happened, how it happened, what. The why is the most important, how it affects their life. Am I asking good questions to get them talking and learning about them and learning what they think the potential problems and risks are and what's really important to them, why they care about it, how it affects their life, and take some notes. As I build that, I'm now ready for part two. So the trust is the first A, the doctor. The second is the assure. What to start with? I got to do the analysis. I got to communicate it like a doctor. I got to think chess, all the complexities, but then make the complex simple. Communicate checkers. Think chess, communicate checkers. Keep it simple. Leave out the vampires. You've been through all the vampires to think it all through. Doctor doesn't share everything. They share the core. First, you're going to come to the hospital. They're going to take blood and prep you for the operation. Second, the nurses are going to come and take. They don't talk about, well, what's the nurse's name and what kind. No, the core things. All to develop your insight, think chess, communicate insight, checkers. And what's the recipe? Cause and effect. There's only 5 causes of anything good or bad to happen. Who did it? What happened? Where it happened? How it happened. Only one effect. The why. Why is it important? And the why helps you prioritize what you're going to work on. And then what drives action? The experience after they bought, after they start using, that then they're going to gain or avoid? What's the recipe? What's in it for them? And that drives behavior. So let me give you a quick example of this. Typical sales training is feature benefit. So let's try it out. I got a new shampoo. It's got these special ingredients. It makes your hair really shiny, right? What are the features? Special ingredients. What's the benefit? Shiny hair. Notice that's what we do to the customer. Now, picture, I utilize what we talked about today. I'm just trying to help people. And say, you know what? We have a shampoo, and it's got these special ingredients and makes your hair really shiny. But you mentioned that you're going out with a bunch of friends Saturday night. Think of how beautiful and confident you're going to feel when you go out with them. Experience. All right. Give me a quick feedback before I go on. How are we doing? Just helping. Does it make sense? You gaining things? Awesome.
Hey, David, there's a question from Jeff
Yeah.
Greenspan.
I missed that. Where is that?
It's yeah, so the key question, yeah.
Key question. My problem is reaching the decision maker. I always use your process, but nobody answers the phone. Can we deal with that? Jeff, call me offline because I don't have time to build it in today, but I'm happy to help you with that. Is that fair? Right? Because that's a whole complex decision thing. I need to understand what you're doing, what you're selling, how you're doing. I'm happy to help you through that. Fair? All right. Maggie, I got an assignment for you. Ready?
Okay.
All right. So you got a stopwatch or a watch? You can count
I got
seconds. Okay,
got it.
everybody else, here's what I want you to do. When I turn the page, I want you to first find the number 1, and then find the number 2, and after that, find the number 3, and see how far you can get in 60 seconds. And Maggie, you count off the last 5 seconds, okay?
Got it.
Ready? Go. First find the number 1, then the number 2. Maggie's counting off 60 seconds. Let's see how we do. Rhonda, if you're done, you've done this before. All right, we have a few people who must have done this before. So first one, number 1, then the number 2, then the number 3, and see how far you get. How many seconds are we in, Maggie?
35.
Okay.
All right, coming down to 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 60 seconds done.
Okay, everybody quickly in the chat room, just type the number. How many you got to? All right. How many you got? Did you get to 5? Did you get to 7? Did you get to 10? Okay, I see 18s, 13s, 14s, up to 9, 8. Okay, those are all really good. That's typically what I see. We're going to try one more time. We're going to make one change. And then we're going to say, what did we learn from the change? Ready? 1, 2, 3, go. Number 1's in the top left corner. Number 2's just next to it in the next box. Number 3 is one more box over. Number 4 is one more box over. Number 5's next row down. See how far you can get? And if you get to 48, type 48 into the chat box. All right? Okay, so first number 1, then number 2, number 3 is in the third box over, number 4 is in the fourth box over, number 5 is down to the left, whole nother row, then number 6, and number 7. Michael, got the 48. Kathy, 48. Starting to get some 48s. They're coming in. Robert hit 48. All right, we're getting them. We're cleaning it up. How many seconds we got left, Maggie? All
Sorry,
right.
I was on mute. 15.
15. All right. It looks like everybody's getting there. And this is awesome. But you're probably
Okay.
starting to wonder,
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
what's the lesson? The lesson is this: help people visualize, right? When we talk, it all makes sense to us. It's totally logical. But here's what's happening to them. So the key is use visuals, make it really clear when you went from this topic to this topic or paragraph. Make sure they know I just changed paragraphs. I just changed again. Make sure they get those blocks. So that's one of the reasons in presenting. For example, I don't need these PowerPoint slides, but they're not for me. They're for you. Help them visualize. Telling a story, it shares what chapter they're on, right? Our ears hear one word at a time. Well, we can visualize the entire story. Let them know we're in each block. 2, give them that information in bite-sized chunks, not a whole waterfall of information, which is normally how it comes across. And again, I know you don't need these visual report reinforcements, but they're not for you. So every time you switch sort of a paragraph, point to them to something different, show them something, just make it clear. You just switched. Make it clear each box as you go. All right. I'm going to get into a few tools that you can use so you don't have to sell, but you can be a lot more effective in generating revenue. The first one I use all the time, I call Carl. And I use it when I teach people, they ask you a question or you're trying to share something, until you're really comfortable selling, just use Carl all the time. So what's Carl? They ask you something, you want to explain something. So first, the context. The situation was this. And then here's the action I took. Specifically, what happened is first this, second this, third this, sequence. In other words, they can follow it. 3, well, here was the result. This ended up in avoiding this experience and benefited from this experience. And the lesson learned, frankly, is this experience taught me this. And I literally mean use those words. First, the context. Here was the situation. Second, let me tell you about the action. Here's what happened. 1, 2, 3, 4. Explain it. The third key thing, what was the result of that action? Notice I am helping them understand exactly where I am. So let me give you an example. I sometimes have been asked, so I'm going to use Carl to do it. Some people have asked, when and how did you become so purpose-driven, Dave? Well, it's a good question. Let me share the context. The situation was, I'm over in Kenya, in a city called Eldoret, with 3 million people and only 5% have running water and electricity. And I'm representing a philanthropist, working with them to build orphanages and schools and micro businesses. And I'm sitting at a campfire one night with a beer with Kip Keino, who in Africa is extremely well known. He was one of the first Africans to win gold medals, right? And here's the action. Here's what happened. Kip shared with me that night by the campfire, Dave, you come in this world with nothing. You're going to leave this world with nothing. So your only real value is how you leave your family, your friends, and your community behind. Well, going through that, what was the result to me of that conversation with Kip? It was life-changing. Helped me avoid some experiences. Corporate compensation was great, but it was like a drug. It was owning me. And I was probably a little extravagant on cars and homes and things like that, frankly, for my ego. Here's what I gained from this experience. I got to help build orphanages and schools and micro business in Kenya. I saved enough money for my grandchildren's education and a modest lifestyle. So I went from a 6,500 square foot house to a 1,700 square foot house, and I'm happy. I went from Lexuses to Hyundais. You know what? I'm happy. Now I get to do things that make me happy. I get to teach. I get to volunteer. I get to coach. So my criteria now is what's going to make me happy? And the lesson I learned, a purpose-driven life is a happier life. Now notice, if for the key things you're dealing with, you get asked the same things as probably 10 things that are the most common things you get asked or talked about, just put it into Carl. Notice how easy it was to follow that story. So that's one tool. That tool, some of you think you can use? Can you use that? Does it make sense to you? Can you see why it follows everything we've talked about? All right, let's try another tool. I call this my steady tool. And in my corporate life, everyone who reported to me had this on their desk. And here's the concept. If you believe as I do that trust is your most important asset, I learned that at Johnson & Johnson, right? If you can generate trust, you can generate insight, it's going to drive action. And steady helps me do that. And why is that? Because no matter who it is, I mean, it can be the person that trusts you most. But when we tell people stuff, it's less likely to be trusted. But when we share it, it's much more trusted. So take the most important things you hope an employee, a customer, a supplier will know that you're trying to share. Take the most important things and then ask yourself, can I put a statistic on it that shares it? So for example, Colin doesn't say, hey, we're great in pain relief. They say, no, 9 out of 10 hospitals use Tylenol. Why would you trust your family's health to anybody else? Notice that's an opinion. Notice that's an outcome. That's an experience. 2, share it through a testimonial. Not what you said, someone else said. Yeah, I was fat, so I ate at Subway for 6 months. I lost over 100 pounds. Testimonial. They can picture it. It's visual. Expert. Crest has earned the approval of the American Dental Association. Whoa. Analogies, my favorite ones. They work awesome. They create a whole mental image. Essentially, we're creating these scrubbing bubbles that are cleaning all that disgusting toilet. It's doing it for you. Demonstrate it. Look, watch, the first blade's doing this, and the second blade's doing this, and I could never believe it ended up 5 blades, but it did. And if you're live with the person, what they told you, what you said. Another way of getting it, aren't you tired of paying too much for car insurance? What you said. Take the most important things, make them steady. And the third major tool is good questions. And I put some down here for you, just practice these questions, right? Have you noticed? Did you know? Were you aware? Please do me a favor. I'm curious. If you had a magic wand, that's my favorite one. If you had a magic wand, because now it's easy. And if you could change anything. And then reactive to questions. And they ask a question, say, that's what I thought I heard you say. What did I miss? So they add more. That's interesting. Can you explain more? In other words, when they ask a question, they're generally looking for a fact. But what do we know? They're using the fact to form opinions. I want to know why. And by asking a follow-up question, I can get to what's really important, not the question that they asked. So 10 insights to increase success. 1, it's about them, not you. 2, genius is making what's very complex and saying, I can make it simple. Decisions are emotional opinions, just a few of them, so repeat them often. Facts support emotional decisions. They don't drive the decision. Value is witnessed in your differences versus their other options. Visuals are more effective than words. So be graphic. Eliminate jargon, which confuses people, and eliminate vampires, which sucks the blood from your most important stuff. And don't be ragu spaghetti sauce. It's all in there. And pretend you're in your living room. You're just trying to help a friend. In summary, stop selling. Act like a doctor and a teacher instead. People buy to solve a problem. Don't assume you know their problem. You got to get there through questions. They want to avoid buying mistakes. Usually, more than seeking gain. Help them do that. If buying had no risk, why would they pay 1 penny more from you versus their other options? There's no versus other options. And how do they know versus other options unless you share the differences? Customers will buy from you if they understand the experience and risks and differences versus their other options. So your approach help customers accomplish what's best for them. It's not about what your product does. It's about the experience after they've used it. I put here some of the other webinars I've done. I gave you links to them that sort of tie to this of other sessions. If you can't wait and you want tonight's webinar, it's published within usually an hour or two from now. If you write to me, my email's in the bottom left. If you write to me, I'll send it to you tonight. Just say, hey, Dave, I was in a seminar. Here's my email. Can you send it to me? All right, and I'll send it once it's converted tonight. Now, you agreed today be successful if you gain some confidence, because you hate selling, but you need revenue. You gain some insight into customers and what they need and want and how you can help them. And you gain a few tools to help you achieve that. And for me, I said at the end, if you didn't like it, don't tell anybody. If you liked it, nice clap here would be good in the chat session. If you loved it, go wild, thumbs up, tell friends, and come to more of my sessions. How's that sound? Was this valuable for you tonight? Was this helpful to you tonight? I really appreciate so many of you came, and you've made my day. So thank you. And Maggie, I'll turn it back over to you.
All right, so I think, hold on, Wilfredo, the email address is at the bottom of the screen. So it's david.harrison@scorevolunteer.org, in case you wanted to email David after this webinar. Any other questions from anybody? Looks like everybody's
Thank you so much. And the
thumbs
comments
up
mean
there.
so much to me. I mean, those of us that score, that's awesome. Thank you so much. Thanks, everybody. Maggie, thanks for helping me out on this.
You're
And if I can
welcome.
help any of you, just drop me an email and let me know how I can help. Good
Thank
night,
you.
everybody.
Bye.